Howdy, Aggies. A warm Texas welcome to our series, Distinguished Conversations with Hospitality, Tourism and Recreation Leaders. In these sessions, distinguished industry leaders join us on campus as professor for a day. In a recorded discussion with a faculty leader, they share their leadership journey with a live audience. Later in the day, our distinguished guests engage in roundtable discussions with our students and faculty. The following sessions were recorded in College Station, Texas, before an audience of students and faculty. Each contributor has made her or his mark on hospitality and tourism here in Texas and beyond. The recordings are intended as a lasting inspiration for our majors in hospitality, hotel management and tourism, who are the leaders of the future. Our first guest is Dr. Emily Williams-Knight, Chief Executive Officer of the Texas Restaurant Association and Education Foundation. Dr. Williams-Knight is in discussion with University Distinguished Professor Dr. John Crompton. She shares insights about what it takes to be a leader in her particular sector of hospitality and tourism. Please enjoy.
So Dr. Knight, welcome.
Thank you.
My first impression in looking at this eclectic career, where you have been and done so many things, is it doesn't seem to be a logical progression. I suspect when you got out of school, this was not the progression you envisaged.
No.
And so, what is it? How did this take place? How did you manage to get from one to another in such different dimensions of the hospitality area?
Yeah, welcome. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. I will start. I'm going to go back to the third grade, which I know is long before any of you, but I was raised in a military family. So thank you to everyone here who's either served or will serve. And in the military family, you live all over the world, but everything is simply the same, right? So I could stay up one time a week. My mom and dad were both Navy, and watch a show called Hotel with Connie Selica. And if you go back, if you're interested in hospitality when this is over, I encourage you to Google it. It was a fictitious hotel in San Francisco, and she had long black hair, and I thought, I'm going to run a major hotel someday because I love to serve people, and wouldn't that be glamorous? And so from the third grade until I completed my undergrad at Boston University's hospitality school, I knew I was going to go into the service and hospitality industry. I married my high school sweetheart, who happened to be from one of the service academies, because you tend to do that when you're from the military. And we found ourselves in Key West, and the job opportunity that I had was Pizza Hut. And most people would say, like, why would you graduate from Boston University and work for Pizza Hut? Well, it was a global company. They had a management training program that was phenomenal, and they gave me an opportunity. And so for the first year out of school, I was there when the stuffed crust was released. Brutal work, no automation, standing in the back, rolling cheese into dough, making the stuffed crust. Humbling, right? But my first understanding of what it's like for the line employees in our industry to do their jobs. And then I was recruited to go over across the street to the two Key West resorts, where I became a wedding and event planner and uncovered the pain of the mother of the bride. And at 22 was navigating weddings of all sorts across Key West, and then got transferred because my husband moved, and that's when I took a turn into higher ed. And so I would say, if you look at the moves on paper, it's not as logical. But if you look at the moves on taking my skill set and using my network to get to that next job, almost every single job I had was because someone called me and said, I want you to come work with me. And I think that is probably the most important lesson that I try to give people today, is it's not always what you know, it is 100% always in the equation who you know, who is in your LinkedIn, who is in your network. And you never make enemies, because they will circle around the minute you want the next opportunity in life. You will cross someone that you were unkind to, undisciplined with, didn't treat well, I can assure you. And so for me, my network is just as important as what I've accomplished. And that's sort of why my moves have always been in the space, but it's gone from education to lobbying to being in the operation to writing textbooks for authors to running an institution, graduating hundreds of hospitality students a year. And I think that's the gift of this industry, is it's not just working in a restaurant or hotel. You can go 1,000 different places, which is what I've done, I think.
So there's an aphorism that's well known that it's not just about the grades you make, but it's the hands you shake.
Absolutely. And the grades are important, but I always tell people I was not a great student in high school. I mean, whoa. I was more interested in athletics but I was curious. And I think that's the gift too, is that even if you're in econ or accounting right now and it's brutal, or maybe some of you are engineering majors and that's so difficult, that is one piece of who you are, but that doesn't define you. And I think I'm such a living example of that. People think, oh, you must have been the top of it. No, I just can figure things out really quick. And I think that is a gift.
This ties in with what strikes me also is your first job was a very base job. And I suspect many people in this room have jobs of that ilk and are thinking, if this is what I came to get a degree for, I'm wasting my time here.
No, you're not. I went back. I now work closely with the CEO of Yum, who owns Pizza Hut. I got to dance with Mr. Marriott, Dick Marriott, because I'm on a board with him now. And he came to visit my hotel when I was in college as an intern, right? So the world comes full circle, but it literally is every person you meet. Like, if anyone today leaves without connecting with me on LinkedIn, that's a missed opportunity, right? Because now you've had interaction with someone that probably has a big network that when you go to look for a job, you can say, you know, Mrs. Dyett, I saw you in the class and I want to go work for this company. I see that you know somebody there. Can I send you my resume? And if you feel comfortable, maybe you want to introduce me to them, right? That's how it all works. I think that's the power.
In addition to my own professional life, Emily, I have a political life. And one of the things I learned early on in my political life, I've been on the council there many times in College Station, and one of the things I learned in my political life was I have a spreadsheet. And everybody I meet is on the spreadsheet. I
Brilliant.
have their phone number, their address, and their email. And that spreadsheet probably has, a couple of thousand names on it now. And when it's time to run for office, I'm there. And you're really doing the same thing in your professional life. You're keeping
Yes.
that spreadsheet so you don't lose track of them.
That's right.
5 years later, you go back and say,
Right.
and introduce them and so on.
Absolutely.
That's fascinating. Let me move on a little bit. Could you please describe who the Texas Restaurant Association are?
Yeah.
What do they comprise of? How does it operate? And what do they do?
Sure. So who here's heard of the Texas Restaurant Association before today? Wow. Okay, I would have thought nobody, but Dr. King, thank you for the support. So I always say that we're the insurance policy that you don't know you need to have. And so just the landscape in Texas is incredibly, probably much larger than you would imagine. We have just under 60,000 restaurants in our state, and it's about a $106 billion industry annually. Think about the tax implication of that to the state, right? It's an economic powerhouse. But we are now the largest private employer in the state of Texas. 1.4 million people work in restaurants and food service in every form or fashion. If you actually expand that out from the farm, agriculture, all the way through the supply chain to everyone who services restaurants, it is 2, 3, 4 million people. It's massive. And so our job simply is to be the voice, the collective voice of all of those restaurants, and to be the lobby force at the local, state, and federal level. What does that mean? It's from the health departments, which there are 200 in our state, navigating health departments for restaurants.
Not by me, there are 200.
200 health.
Does each county have one?
There are 254 counties, so our smaller counties may share.
Okay.
But think about 200 sets of rules because they're not standardized, right? So you're trying to navigate that for restaurants. You're navigating all tax policy, building, licensing, safety, alcohol. I know some of you are in that space. All of that is sort of at the local level. At the state level, we are in the legislature representing all restaurants to the governor and the House and the Senate. What does that mean? It means we stop all the bad laws, which we're about to go into session. And I can talk about some interesting bad laws, and we pass laws and we get the governor to sign them into law officially because we want restaurants to have the best landscape. And then we work federally on things like no taxes on tips. Thank you to our presidential candidates for that nightmare. Immigration reform, tax policy, agriculture rules, food safety rules. So that is one side of our business, which is the political side. We have a PAC. We endorse candidates. We raise money to support them. The other side is all the education. And so we do the training and certification for you to work in our industry. We are currently now in 70 different facilities across the state with justice involved, training them in our space so when they come out, they can get meaningful work. We do military transition programs, and then we have 27,000 high school students learning food service in our curriculum across the state of Texas and high schools everywhere. So we like to think of it as the workforce side, and then keeping the regulations in Texas fair for restaurants to be able to grow their businesses.
Okay, I'm going to come back and elaborate on those two dimensions later, Emily, but at this point, how are you governed? Is this organization an individual, do individuals join, or is it something that entities join, or is it, and what's your board look like, and and how many are on your team? Give us some, I feel for the logistics.
Yeah, so I am gifted with about 110 people on the board.
Yeah, what? 110 people sit around a boardroom and tell you what to do.
Wow, tell me what to do. No. Yes, it is fascinating. So I have an incredibly large board on the association and our education foundation. Their role really is to be the stewards and represent the areas of both the industry and the geography, right? So
How often do they meet?
so we meet twice a year formally. We just came out of Galveston for 3 days.
Okay.
And we have, all the committee meetings, all the finance and audit, the governance, we talk about policy, and then we do a lot of education. But I need to make sure that the person who owns a food truck in College Station has a voice as a Tillman Fertitta, who is one of the biggest restaurant owners in the nation. And so we cross all geography in our landscape to make sure everyone's represented. And then we cross every industry, so catering, food service, multi-chain, Chipotle, right? The big brands as well. And so you can't have good decision making if you don't represent the entire industry.
And so you don't have, this is not an open board. There are slots that are designed for certain people so that everybody's
Absolutely.
represented and people run for those slots.
Correct. And they interview, they go through a thorough vetting process, they come on the board, they run for two years, and then they can be adopted again or, certified to come another 2 years. Then they roll off and the next group comes in. And I think any given year I have 13 to 18 new board members that are coming on to the board.
And presumably you have some kind of executive board that you can go to on a daily basis. You don't
Yes.
have to wait every 6 months to meet them.
Correct. We have committee meetings. I talk to the executive committee every month. My job is simple, no surprises, right? If there's any risk to the business, if there's policy issues, I can tell you when the presidential candidates both did no taxes on tips. The first, I believe, was on a Sunday. I was telling Dr. King, my phone blew up in 2 seconds because Senator Cruz wanted to file a bill right away. And people asked me, did you know that this no taxes on tips was coming? And not only did we not know, but I don't think the former president's team knew. And so it's those fire drills that may have us assemble the board, the executive committee more quickly than we would.
Are these individual members or are they entity members?
Individuals, it's an individual seat, not a company seat.
And how many individual members do you have?
About 110 between the two.
No, I mean as total membership.
Oh, so we actually, the way we represent it is we represent the entire industry. We have about 38% of the market are paying members of our organization.
38% of the market. What's your budget?
We're just under 7 million with 26 people.
And you have a staff of 26.
We had a staff of 55 when I joined prior to the pandemic.
Okay. Let me move on a little bit and ask you to sort of talk about general trends in the restaurant industry. If you go back 10 years, for example, what has changed over the last 10 years and what do you think is going to change in the next 10 years?
I think what's probably changed the most is the consumer's power to, and you all, I know, do this, is you want a restaurant experience when you want it, how you want it, and where you want it. And that was always a place-bound. 10 years ago, restaurants were a place-bound business, right? You enjoyed the service at that restaurant. And I think COVID accelerated a move that was already happening, which was restaurants need to meet you where they are. So the definition of a restaurant's changed completely. The integration of the convenience stores, the Buc-ee's of the world, grocery, right, where you can get food to go, prepared food, you can stop in, has eaten some share away from restaurants and really changed the definition of a restaurant. Third-party delivery, who here uses third-party delivery? Most of you, right? DoorDash, Uber, anyone? I know you all. My daughters did a $20 Pizookie one day and I almost lost my mind because it's like an $8 item and it was $21.50 when it showed up at the house, right? That is number one. I think number two is the incredible evolution of technology. COVID sped that up for us, but there is no doubt, and I'll give you the number that will stick in your head from a business standpoint. It takes on average 12 or more people to generate 1 million of revenue in a restaurant.
Say that again.
12 people or more to generate $1 million in revenue in a restaurant, right? It's a labor-intensive business model. You go to grocery, which is our number one competitor, and it's 3.7 on average. So just think back to the last 10 years and the increase in labor costs and the increase in food costs. That model has been flipped on its head. So the speed of which we can put artificial intelligence and robotics in the kitchen to reduce some of those numbers and allow those employees that work there to do what they should be doing, which is the hospitality, which is why you go to a restaurant. That acceleration is something I haven't experienced in my 25 years. So I would say that is significant.
House materials where you see the robotics having its most impact, not the front.
Right now, it's the back of the house and it's the ordering on the customer side, which is where we see the greatest advancements, right? Where soon you will not be engaging with anyone when you order. Even if you're a sit-down restaurant, you may sit down at a restaurant. Let's say it's a casual dining brand, and there's a screen now at your table, and the person that's waiting on you is actually a stay-at-home mom who's working part-time, and they're servicing you because they don't have to come to the restaurant, and they can serve way more clients that way. That's some of the things that are being tested, and so far the response from customers is very favorable because it's about speed.
There's an anomaly in the pricing structure of restaurants, which has always puzzled me. It is that in marketing, we have learned that customers love discounts and they hate surcharges. And so when you have differential pricing, say one thing's priced at $10 and another's at 15, you price the thing at 15 and offer discounts. You don't price it at 10 and put on surcharges. And that brings me to the whole business of tips, because I get my bill and now I'm confronted by this machine which has upped its percentages substantially and relies on me to check the middle button because I don't want to appear miserable, and I can't afford to be over generous, so I press the middle button, and that middle button's now moving up to 25 from 20. It used to be 15, and when I was coming in this business, it was 10. So surcharges are banging in, and that runs counter to what I know about customers' reactions.
Yeah, does anyone here feel tipping fatigue right now?
Oh, yeah.
Do you feel like even if you buy a bottle of water, someone smiles and flips over the screen and wants a tip, right? We are at a crisis in our industry, and I'm going to separate it out. This is the way I view it. There's a service that you pay for, and there's a transaction which you should not be tipping on. And we, unfortunately, have confused the consumer. So, and the two examples I give is I was racing through DFW, I fly a lot, and I needed a bottle of water recently. And I went up to the Instant Bros, my daughter used to call it that, the Einstein brothers. And I grabbed the bottle of water out of the case, and I went up, and I'm like, I gotta go. And he flips the screen around, and my options were 25, 30, 35 on the $3.90 bottle of water. Now, like you, two things happen. From the psyche, I look at this poor soul and I think, oh, he's in my industry, I should, but I don't want to. So if I do, I'm mad at myself, and if I don't, I feel bad. So we're causing consumers to actually disconnect from the tipping process completely. Then I go into a sit-down restaurant where I have someone whose income relies on tips, and I'm fatigued, and I'm annoyed, and so I tip less. So all the way around, we have got to get back, and we encourage restaurants now, if you have employees working a transaction-based role, get the tipping off the screen, right? If you were providing a service and you were sitting down in a restaurant, or you're providing a service and you have 1,000 people eating dinner and it's a to-go meal and someone's packaged it all up and they're standing there and they're sweaty and they bring it to your car, yes. But now everywhere you go, somebody wants a tip, and it's hurting our industry significantly.
And so this is more prevalent in the United States than other countries, and the reason, as I understand it, that you're so reliant on tips is because you don't have a minimum wage base, that you opted out, or the industry opted out of minimum wage way back when, so there's no obligation to pay a working wage, and which means they're reliant on tips. That is not true in other countries. I spent
Correct.
A lot of time in New Zealand, Australia, and so on. There's no tipping, because on there at all. And so why don't you all as an industry advocate for a reasonable working wage and abolishing tipping?
Yeah, so we're always going to support the tip credit for two reasons. And the most important reason is the employees want the tip credit. So the tip credit essentially is that you pay X wage and the tips have to exceed the minimum wage entirely, or you have to actually pay the minimum wage. In the state of Texas, the average server is $28 to $32 an hour. If we move everyone to under $8 an hour, servers lose. In the business cases where this has been tested, for example, anyone been to Washington, D.C. in the last year and a half? They abolished the tip credit. The service and the employees, I think now 20% of employees have left the sector completely. So if you're at an old Ebbett Grill and you're making $125,000 a year, and now you're making minimum wage with no expectation, because by the way, the restaurant's not going to want you to tip, because the prices are now higher, because the restaurant business model has to pay more out of pocket, it is not faring to be a great case study. So for us, we believe, and we know that we had 11 of these battles in states across the country this year, and not one passed. The next one we're watching closely is Massachusetts, where the Democratic governor came out this week and said, please keep tips. I've interviewed employees, they want to earn their tips. And so I think we need to let the employees speak, and they love the tipping model here in the U.S.
Okay, so you are a central focus of what has been termed the gig economy, that people move in and out of this thing without job security. Many times the jobs are without benefits, and there's no consistency. You have great turnover rates and so on. And nobody wants that. The employer doesn't want it. The employee doesn't want it. The employer doesn't want it. How do you address that situation? What's the Restaurants Association's position on that?
Yeah, I think I think there's always going to be churn. How many of you have worked in a restaurant? Yeah. So the restaurant industry, especially as the largest employer, is there for your first job, your middle job, your I need extra income job, and your last job. But it's also a pathway to prosperity for so many. There are very few industries left in America where you can start and become an owner of a franchise within 2 to 3 years. That is the reality of the business. That's not the story that gets told, right? You need to pick up a shift, you need to make money, you need to earn an income for 6 months while you're a student here. You can go get that restaurant job with no training at all, just your certification. But then you decide, you know what, I'm gonna build my career here. And you can become multi-millionaire as a business owner. And that is really rare. So that's, I think, first. Second, I think what we're realizing, and this is something that I'm really proud of, it's become as much a passion project. I have twin daughters, Roll Tide and Gig'em, and I had to get that in for her because she's like, don't just talk about Lizzie at A&M. So whatever, they lost, but it is what it is. That's a little unfortunate. But I think that for younger people, I think it should be a place where you can come for a period of time. But I also think it's a place you can build a career. And one of the things that we're lobbying very hard for is childcare. And for a lot of you, this is not something even on your radar, but 54% of our industry, and it's the second largest industry in America behind the government, are women. And you cannot build a career if you don't have affordable childcare and a safe place to put your children. And so as an association for businesses, we're actually leading a coalition in the state of Texas that is getting the attention of the speaker, it's getting the attention of the lieutenant governor, to say it's an economic imperative that we fix this in our state, and we're serious about giving working families a place to put their children.
So what does that look like in reality? I mean, who's paying for that? Where's it going to be? What's the concept is fine, but how do you operationalize it?
But see, there's not a silver bullet. It's not about paying. We've done research for about a year with this coalition. It's things like home-based care and 100 set of rules across the state, right? Create one set of safety standards for home-based care so families can open home-based daycares, which is what families prefer. Do pilots.
You're going to put your child with a neighbor who's authorized to do this.
Correct. And we're not talking about not having regulation. We're talking about having the right regulation and making it clear for entrepreneurs that want to start these businesses that they understand what the rules are and they can keep children safe and grow their business. It's the waiting list and how the waiting list works in our state It's not just kids on the subsidy program, right? There are working families. I have 2 employees now that are about to go out on maternity leave that are saying to me, I want to come back. I don't know where to put my child. There are no spots. There are 50% of our state right now has a desert. There are no childcare centers. So what are you expected to do, right? So to me, and what we're uncovering is that this is a multi-year, multi-step plan that involves both regulation, private business, funding of some initiatives and pilot programs, but it's not just a handout. We don't need $10 billion to fix the problem. The entire infrastructure is broken. And so we're going to go to the legislature and say, if you can invest in this plan, there is some spending, but there's also a heck of a lot of regulation and rules that have to be modified in order for this business to grow and let the private sector come in.
So when you look at childcare, the viability of it as a business is minimal. It's very marginal. And you put people on the bottom of the payroll, and if you raise your prices, the people who need that childcare most no longer can afford it. And so you have this conundrum.
Correct.
You don't have a business model that works for the clientele, which is middle, low income people can afford. So how do you resolve that if you don't have subsidy involved?
Yeah, so I think I'll give you the best example that Peter Holt, who owns the Spurs, and obviously Holt Caterpillar, is one of the biggest advocates for this space. And he was going to open a childcare center on his campus. Small restaurants can't do that, right? We don't have the infrastructure or the resources. And he interviewed a set of employees and said, what do you want? And they said, there's a daycare center, childcare learning center right down the street. She just needs an investment in order to upgrade some of her equipment to get the full state match, which comes from the federal government. Can you just give her money and therefore she can then expand? Because that's where we want to put our kids. It's a $10,000 donation to her. That place has grown, it's successful, the employees have stayed at work, $10,000. It's those private-public partnerships and introducing business to the concept of supporting local that helps keep the government out of just having to hand over money after money. So those are some of the creative, and frankly, Texas is the most entrepreneurial state in the nation. We should be getting into the businesses to have them think of the ideas to help these advocates get what they need.
Let me change gears a little bit here and say, this is Texas A&M University. We are a tier 1 major university. Research is very important here. We train people for managerial jobs and not for the carrot cutting or whatever it is that we do on the behind there and so on. And so what should we be teaching? What should the people going out from this curriculum, what skills do they need? Recognizing that they're going to pick up the back of the house things on internships and jobs they have going through college. What skills would you put the emphasis on in our curricula?
Service and hospitality. When I was at the Swiss schools, some of the best brands in the world recruited those hospitality students, whether it be Louis Vuitton, name an Italian or French brand. They loved those students for 2 reasons. They were global, right? So they actually understood the world existed outside of College Station or Texas or where I was. They had a set of skills on the EQ side that were off the charts, right? And I think there are people that are networkers and people that are analyzers and some fall in between. But at the end of the day, having global ambassadors that can integrate in any environment, you could throw me, I always tell people, I managed a global team in Switzerland. I was the only American and the only one that spoke a single language. My entire team spoke 3, 4, 5 languages. I spoke English only, right? I was already at a disadvantage, but I wasn't at a disadvantage because I was incredibly open. Uh-oh, are we okay? Incredibly open to learning and very, very curious. And so as I think about all of you and I think about your careers, the X's and O's matter, but so much now with technology, we can teach you how to do the fundamentals of the job, but what we can't teach you is how you treat people, how you integrate with people, and how you make decisions and resolve conflict. I was sitting around I remember sitting in a very remote part of China, and I had my team that was based in China, and we're all sitting around and we're just whispering, and they're asking me all sorts of questions about life and interest, and we're literally putting fish in the sauce. And I remember sitting back and just thinking, this is the most unbelievable industry. Like, I'm in a remote part of China. I grew up in an enlisted military family, right? This was not, and here I am with people that see the world so differently than I do and are teaching me something. And we're opening this school, La Roche, in China, in a Swiss/American university. And if I didn't have the ability to be curious and want to get to know them and care about them as people, I would never have been successful, honestly. I think that's what's missing sometimes, is we teach all the hard stuff. Accounting and finance, but can you look at someone in the eyes and figure out what's great about them and make that person feel special? That is what you build your career on. And I think what this school, which I'm so excited is here now, you guys can change the world and bring a lot of international students here to integrate with our US-based students. And it's better all the way around.
Looking at your own career, which has been so eclectic and so mobile, it seems to me that that's the way. This hospitality industry in many ways is kind of like the military. To progress, you probably have to move around a whole lot. I looked at GMs in hotels, and invariably they've been all around the place, getting more and more and more as they go. And so how does that match with people's desire to have a family and to establish links in their community and so on? Is it the basis can it be the basis of a fulfilling career as well as having a fulfilling family or friendship life?
Yeah, I think you just have to decide when you say to yourself, I want to have it all, you have to define what all means to you. And it's not the same for everyone. For me, all meant that I was going to raise my family and I was going to be a great executive, not always on the same day. Choose your partner carefully, whoever that may be, because you've got to have somebody, if you are going to have a global career, that allows you to have that time away, that's going to engage and take on responsibilities in the home, whether you're husband or wife. But I can't imagine looking back. And I would say children model what they see. And so one of my twin daughters from 16, 17, 18 flew to Tanzania 3 times, twice independently, through Doha, overnight in the airport to work in a remote village supporting women. And I remember thinking, why are you doing this? And she's like, well, Mom, I always watched you travel and it looked really interesting. And so there is the modeling that happens as a family. And then there's also the acceptance that you will miss things. And you just have to decide what the things are that you won't miss. I can remember being I think I was in Doha, or Qatar, in Qatar, and my daughter was doing a speech in the 5th grade. And I had to FaceTime in, and the teacher put me on the board, and I watched her do her little, I was like, that's amazing. It was, decent, but it was amazing. And then I, turned it off, and I went back in and I finished my meeting. So, but I think for a lot of people, if your dream is that you really want to be local and you want to be the GM of a property and be networked, or it really depends on what you want out of your life. And my only advice is only you know what that is, and don't let anyone deter you. But if you have that aspiration to get out of here and to go abroad, you have to do it, because it's a muscle that will never go back. I can be in any conversation with anyone and find value to add because of the experiences that I've had. And that's a gift. You never want to be standing there when someone's talking about something and just listen, right? You want to be able to add value in some way.
Whenever people invite me to go do workshops or presentations or whatever, I think twice about it these days, because I don't travel as well as I used to. But if it's something I've never done before, I'm going to force myself to say yes, because that's the way you grow. You grow by putting yourselves into new environments and in new situations outside your comfort zone. And it's the challenge of it which enables you to get up every day and keeps life to be exciting. It gets you out of simply the routine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And how many of you want to go abroad someday? Yeah, all of your hands should be up. I really mean that. I didn't get to study abroad as a kid. I was military, so we lived in a couple of foreign destinations. But I really think if you get a chance to decide if you like it or not, do a study abroad, do a 2-week go abroad and see what that feels like. And because if you look at the hospitality jobs, there are more international jobs projected in the future than there are here in the US. There's incredible companies here in the US, and the landscape from tourism to working in hotels or restaurants, or I'm a policy lobbyist now for the industry, the hospitality industry. So there's so many ways you can go, but I also think while you're in this insular environment, take a 2-week and go abroad and see what you think, see what it feels like. I was in Portugal 2 weeks ago for 2 days, actually. It was crazy, meeting my board. And I get up in the morning and I just walk the city. And I remember thinking to myself, again, I'd not been to this part of Portugal, and I thought, this is just like everywhere else. And guess what? The Moxie Hotel, which is like the size of this table, it was just like the one back here. It wasn't much different.
Let me shift over again now to talk more about your responsibilities with the Restaurant Association. You earlier identified both external stakeholder responsibilities and internal education. Talk a little bit about the kind of education programs that you run. It seemed like it was a pretty extensive menu.
Yeah.
How do you run them, and why would people sign up for them, and discuss those a little bit?
Yeah, so the first one is called ProStart, and that is a high school curriculum for 2 years that our high school students across Texas, some of them have these incredible facilities, world-class kitchens, and students are taking those programs while they're in high school. And so they either have a goal to go right into food service or restaurant management, into hospitality, or off to school, right, to a Texas A&M or one of our community colleges. That's incredible because those students come together once a year to compete. And the winning team goes to Washington and competes against 49 other states. And more importantly,
National program.
It is.
State franchise of it.
Correct. And so we have high school teachers that are passionate about the program, but it's really where someone can say, I'm really creative, this is what I want to do with my life. While not really owned or managed by us, something that's been evolving, which is pretty cool, is something called High School Barbecue. And if anyone has seen Barbecue High on TV, it's a series that was developed here in Texas. It's running now on Discovery, the Magnolia Network, and we have hundreds of students across the state that are in barbecue teams, and they compete on weekends all across the state. Most importantly, the winning teams almost fully fund their higher education through scholarships.
Now, do you organize these? How does this happen?
Yeah, we manage the ProStart program through our foundation.
So how many a year would you put on in these?
Oh, there are ProStart events every couple times a month across the state, and then our national competition is in March. Our state competition leading to national is every March.
Okay.
And you should come. It's in Waco. Okay. It's very close.
And these are hands-on
Yes.
culinary kinds of activities.
And management. So there's a management component.
As well. So a little bit about those.
That's where students come up with the next restaurant concept. What's the next restaurant concept that you would build, knowing everything you know today about the market? And then you have to present everything from the business plan, the finances, the food cost, the menu, and then you have to prepare that food. And so those are for people who don't want to be in the kitchen. I always say there's front of the house people and back of the house people. I was definitely a front of the house. I had to take culinary classes at BU, and it was a disaster. And I just do cereal today, so that's pretty much all I can make. But that is one program. And then for the workforce itself, right, for the workforce in place, I'm very proud of the fact that folks that are justice involved, they need a job and they need a second chance. And so we can actually train them as they're finishing their time and link them to a job, so when they exit, they're actually working in the industry and they have meaningful work. That is something that we've just launched that we think is going to be a game changer in Texas.
You know, most of the hospitality industries, like Pizza Hut in your early days, have management training programs, but unfortunately, the number of slots available for those is pretty limited. Is your organization in a position to provide the same kind of opportunities that those provide to a larger number of people? Can you be a substitute in some way for that?
Yeah, we are. So we have a lot of professional development curriculum through our partners at the National Restaurant Association, because one of the things you have to think about is there's no credentialing in our industry. So if you were to leave Darden and move to Brinker, you have your resume, but you don't have any credentials, a CPA or whatever it might be. There's nothing that shows your demonstrated ability. But if we can create that certification program, which the National Association has, you can be earning that professional development credit that then transfers to your next firm. I spent last Wednesday at Darden's headquarters. Darden is the largest casual restaurant company. They just bought our beloved Chuy's. Let's hope they don't Olive Garden, our Chewy's. But they are, $13 billion company, 200,000 employees, 2,000 restaurants. They are well suited to build an incredible training program. I was at their headquarters. They have kitchens and there were managers being flown in. It was incredible. But more than 70% of the restaurant industry is independent, small operators. That's where we can come in. They can't afford that type of scalable training. We can give them that professional development training and help them develop their people so they can become GMs and owners.
Challenge of running a small business, and I started life running a small business in England, which happened to be successful in spite of my own ineptitude in running it. It was a classic case of being in the right place at the right time with the right product. But the challenge always is you're undercapitalized. Always the challenge is getting sufficient funds to be able to hire the next person for the expansion and so on. And to get there, all your existing people are overstretched before you can generate the revenue to do it. How do restaurants handle that? You see so many start and fail. The failure rate has to be tremendous in the industry. How can you get past that? And there are a number of students in our classes who want to be entrepreneurs, but I don't think they really appreciate the challenges associated with funding those kinds of things.
Yeah, first and foremost, you have to do your homework. We had a concept once that came to us, and it was, they wanted to have this bird flair. I mean, like birds, like squawk, squawk birds, this bird flair restaurant with I think it was like Belize feel, and they were going to put parrots above each table to enjoy, and you can just go ahead and think for 2 seconds about the problem with birds above a table. And they were going to get the funding from an uncle, and they just knew that bringing this Central America cuisine was going to be this game changer. And we had to kind of back them right back out of it, right? So a couple things. One is you can't just have your mom's great lasagna recipe. More restaurants go out of business because people feel that they have the best food, but they have no idea what food cost is, what taxes are, what regulations are, what health code is. It is not enough to have something that you think the customer wants. You have to be able to run the restaurant. And that's where so many people go wrong. It's where franchisees go wrong. I just watched someone in my town post that they've just become a franchisee, her and her husband, of this latest and greatest concept. I looked at the quick pro forma of being a franchise and I thought I would never buy into this, right? It's in a dying segment. You can't make enough or sell enough to actually cover the cost, but they want to be entrepreneurs and business owners. So first and foremost is you got to understand the finances. You have to know the inputs and outputs. And when you experience what we have in the last 4 years, we've had a 28% increase in wages and a 31% increase in food cost. Rent's gone up north of 20% and traffic is falling. Now, most of us aren't business majors in this room, but does that sound like that's going to be a great equation to operate in? No, because you can't discount your way to profitability. So we try to tell folks, entrepreneurs are what makes this country great. Entrepreneurs is what frankly grows the restaurant industry, but do not go in it unless you have a very solid business plan. And when I mean solid, you've got to have the financials, because if not, you're not going to be successful. The market is too crowded.
Yeah, I was intrigued some years ago. I went into a McDonald's in New Braunfels, and the person who served me was the mayor of Bryan. And I said, this is nuts. And then I learned that he was actually buying out a franchise from McDonald's in this community. And McDonald's had insisted that he go into another franchise, do the back of the house, the front of the house, understand the business plans.
I think one of our presidential candidates just did that.
In fact, authorize his franchise. And so I was ahead of the game. It made no sense, but now from what you said...
Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Let's move on to your external role now, which is in many ways the most challenging and the most impactful. And that is, you are known as being an effective lobbyist in the legislature of Texas. And as we all know, the legislature meets just for 5 months, every 2 years. And the people of Texas many years ago decided that perhaps they do enough in that 5 months and they don't need to be there for the other 19 months of the 2-year period. But anyway, how have you been so effective? What's the key to your effectiveness in the legislature?
Relationships. I think this is a really good lesson for everyone in the room, is that when I took the role, I had not met the governor or been introduced to any elected officials. I knew one, and that was Congressman Chip Roy, that I had met at a fundraiser right before the pandemic came awry. And so I didn't know who was a Republican and who was a Democrat. I was pretty new to the job, right? I'd come out of Illinois, was back in Texas, and I got the call. I'd come out of, and this is a funny story, but I'd come out of DC, where they were ringing the bell. I was in Congressman Crenshaw's office, and they were ringing the bell for the first coronavirus relief package. And I remember thinking, like, this seems like a New York problem, like, I don't know. And then I had a long meeting with Senator Cruz, being introduced to him. And I flew home, and I woke up the next morning, and I had a call from his chief of staff, and it went like this. Hi, thanks so much for being here. You might want to quarantine because the senator is going to quarantine. He may have the coronavirus. It's like, what? I can't get like a disease from the senator. Like, that seems really weird. And he said, well, and there was, if you think back, there was this White House party where people got sick, and he was there. So now something we're not familiar with, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, again, a New York problem, right? Had not come anywhere near Texas. And I stayed home for 3 days. I was not ill. And so I flew my family to a much needed vacation in Mexico. I was on the ground 2 days when the governor's chief of staff called, and he said, hi, is Deputy Chief of Staff. I'm Gardner Pate. I'm new. I believe you're new. I don't know what's about to happen, but if we make a promise to work together and to be partners, we're going to get through this. And we made that commitment. And I think for me, over that next 5-month period, I didn't care who you were at the federal level. I had calls with President Trump, with Secretary Mnuchin. It didn't matter who you were. I didn't know, because I just needed you to help me save these restaurants. So number one is, you cannot go into life thinking that you need one side of the party. Life doesn't work that way. Our legislature and our executive branch in Texas is all Republican, but Democrats in many times are the ones that help push us over on really good policy. So that's first and foremost, is that we work in a very bipartisan way. We produce $2.36 to the local economy for every dollar you spend in a restaurant. You should care about us. And we learned in the pandemic that, guess what? Restaurants aren't a nice to have. We're 54% of your food dollar. Take $1 out of your pocket, and 54% of it goes to a restaurant or food service establishment. So we're critical feeding infrastructure. So we have repositioned ourselves not as a nice to have, support the place you love to go have an event, but we've positioned it as, if you don't support us, you can't feed Texans. No different than water or electricity. And so as we go into the legislature, we bring both sides to the table. We were able to pass bills like alcohol to go, an all-time favorite, created in my house on day 2 of the pandemic, which was, you can buy a bag of chips and 2 gallons of margaritas at your local restaurant and take it home. You're welcome. Safely. But a funny story about that, when we first got the rule changed in the pandemic, we zip tied everything. So anyone here has military affiliation, when the governor's office came back and said, Emily, we need a tighter seal if we're going to do this. And all I could remember is my dad grew up zip tying the crap out of everything as a military guy. And so there were no zip ties in the state of Texas because we zip tied everything. And then we turned it into law. And then we said groceries, they should be able to be sold in restaurants. If there's an ice storm here, your grocery store shelves are empty within 24 hours. The restaurant food supply chain and the grocery supply chain run parallel. They don't interact. They never intersect. So we want restaurants now to be able to sell groceries. Now they can. We passed that law. And then we stop a lot of laws. My favorite last session. We don't sell drugs in restaurants. And if restaurants do sell drugs, please see me after the break, because that is not one of our core competencies. However, they wanted us to have all of our employees trained to administer Narcan when they saw someone having an overdose. Does that sound like a good idea? If you're at the Dutch Bros down the street and someone pulls up and you think they're having a drug reaction, that you should Narcan them with that kind of training, it's ridiculous. That's the kind of stuff that we have to be at the legislature to oppose. A big one, property tax relief. We have to make sure property tax relief that we're probably going to get again this session isn't just for homeowners. Business owners have to benefit. And then one of the most important things we've done, which I'm so proud of, is something called the preemption bill. We watch everything that California does and we stop it from coming to Texas. So, I mean, that's what we do, right? You talk about bad policy, go to California. That is bad policy. Preempting natural gas. Who's cooked on stoves without natural gas, right? They wanted to preempt natural gas or make it so you couldn't use natural gas in any new builds in Berkeley, California. We made sure that never happened across Texas. Packaging. We made sure there's one set of rules on packaging, wages, scheduling. We can't have 254 counties making their own rules for businesses. We preempted all of it last session and said, if you want to make those changes, you have to do it at the state capitol. It does two things. It makes it much harder to make changes, and it also makes sure operators, if you operate in Bryan County or Tarrant County, you have the same set of economic and labor rules. That's our job, is to make sure we have predictability in the business, we stop bad things, and then we look for opportunities for restaurants. For example, a big one for me is going to be disaster relief. When Uvalde happened, within 8 hours, we had our restaurants feeding on the ground in that horrific tragedy because Jose Andres Group, World Central Kitchen, partnered with us, funneled the money through the restaurants, paid our restaurants to feed on the ground their local community far faster than any type of government relief. So that's where we look at SNAP benefits.
So what's interesting to me as you go through that is the role that economics plays in it. And I've learned in my political life that ultimately everything comes down to money. Economics is the game. And so currently we're engaged with the Texas Parks and Wildlife, and they've had enormous success in the legislature recently in getting state parks in, first of all, $1 billion endowment in the last one. And before that, getting the sporting goods tax cap limited, which had led to another $150 million a year for the agency.
That's right.
Into the Constitution. Built on economics.
Mm-hmm.
So some years ago, we decided parks are not, to use your phrase, nice places to have. Parks are, in fact, economic engines for host local communities in rural areas.
Yes.
That positioning was key.
Absolutely.
So you do the studies and we demonstrate the kind of numbers you just shared about $1 for you generates $2.50 or whatever, and you have people's attention. You're talking important things like money. It's not about going to a park to throw a frisbee.
Right,
It's
right.
not about those kinds of things. Those don't fly. It's always about money, particularly in the state of Texas.
Yes. And it's for us positioning childcare not as a social issue. It is a social issue, but it's an economic issue. And so by reversing that and having the business community lead on that, we're going to make a lot more progress.
One of the things that puzzles me a little bit, Emily, is that you live in the Metroplex in Southgate. And so the legislature meets in Austin. That seems to me a disconnect. I mean, most people who are lobbying for the legislature live in Austin. Mm-hmm. You're in Southgate. How does that work?
So the lobbying that happens at the Capitol is every 2 years. And so we're actually, probably a month away from having all of our bills ready to be filed, everything that we're going to do for the next session. But my work is much more in district. So it's great to be in Austin, and I live in Austin when the session happens. I have a nice little place to live there.
Oh, okay.
But I live in Southlake, Texas, because I'm not in Austin or Southlake when the legislature is not there. I'm in district, meeting with our candidates, I'm going to Washington, meeting with industry folks. I probably this year, I think I said I've been on the road 162 days, I think, this year. And I know that from my Marriott on my phone, very loyal. But I think, you need to be where the candidates are. And the best thing we can do is bring the candidates and go to their local community and sit with restaurant owners, with their constituents and their community, and have a conversation.
And you can't be doing all of this alone. You have 26 people. Could you briefly, and let's conclude with this sort of comment, briefly describe how the workload of those 26 is divided? What are the divisions? How do they divvy it up?
Yeah.
How does it work?
Like a traditional business, if I'm honest, right? So I'm very blessed, the Chief Public Affairs Officer, so think of Chief Lobbyist. Her name is Kelsey. She's incredible. She's a UT grad in law. We don't hold it against her. We do, actually. But she's remarkable, and she's a policy expert. And so she's one. Head of marketing, global head of marketing, head of people, head of membership. And then we have 23 chapters across the state and 4 more offices. And so those are who's dealing with making sure that Dallas stays on track and Houston stays on track every single day. But I couldn't be here today without my team. My last message, you have to hire people better than you. You have to be humble enough to know that you cannot be an expert in everything. My head of marketing is a far better digital marketer than I am. My head of policy, Kelsey, is a remarkable lobbyist and bill writer and policy, far better than I am. The biggest mistake you can make is thinking that you can't hire someone as good as you because they'll take your job. You want them to someday, but you have to be humble and secure enough to hire people that are far more competent, get out of their way and let them do their job, and then you are much more successful as a leader.
And I think part of that is their skills have to be complementary to yours.
Yes.
I remember when I had my own business, we hired people who were like me because I could identify with them. We were on the same page. Huge mistake.
Yeah.
Particular
You just
skills.
spin in circles.
That's exactly right. And so I'm good in concept and big ideas and outgoing and so on. I'm lousy on details. I hate it. I don't do it. I have
detailed people too.
It's that complementarity, not
Yes.
just it's with personalities as well. Well, Emily, thank you. This has been a marvelous hour of interaction, and you shared some wonderful insights with us. And it's been a wonderful way to initiate our series, and we're privileged to have had you to do it. And I'll invite Dr. King, if you would, please, to come up and perhaps say a few final words. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Crumpton. Emily for president, I think.
No way.
This is such a thrill. Thank you, students, for joining us today for this session, our first ever Professor for a Day in our new Department of Hospitality, Hotel Management and Tourism. And we are thrilled that Dr. Williams-Knight has been our inaugural one. Emily, you are such an inspiration. I think every student in the room and some of our faculty as well, that you've given us so much to think about, and just some of your comments about the hospitality spirit, engaging with people from different backgrounds all over the world, seeing outside our comfort zone, but staying local if we choose to do that. These are all and some of that behind the scenes political lobbying, it's pretty fascinating. I just love listening to what you got to say, Emily. So for students in the audience, please do get Emily's LinkedIn. That was an
please connect.
Suggest. She does wonderful podcasts as well, so you can become a fan of hers. I'm definitely a fan, Emily. This is a thrill for us to do these Professors for a Day. We will do more. They're going to be broadcast, so you can see all the filming and so on, and this nice facility here. It's an exciting development for our department. We hope you like the style of our distinguished professor, Dr. Crumpton, in conversation. Many of you are in his class. I know many of you are in Dr. Egan's class, our marketer-in-chief. Thank you, Heather, for getting us all together. So it's been very much a team effort. Tara, thank you with the photographs. Look, it's very exciting for us, new future for our department. And please do connect with Emily and come back to our future Professors for a Day. So Emily, I'm going to present you with our first ever certificate, which says, we thank you for your time serving as Professor for a Day. Your ability to engage and to share your knowledge has made a lasting impact on the learning experience, and we'll be meeting with students at lunchtime to have in chat. Can I give you that, Dr. Crumpton?
That's awesome.
Emily, thank you
so much. Thank you, Amit. Oh, here?
Yeah.